Welcome to another edition of Early Years Matter Conversations. I'm Matthew Hansen, the managing editor at the Buffett Early Childhood Institute. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Linda Smith, one of the U.S.'s top experts on early childhood policy. Linda is the director of early childhood initiatives at the Bipartisan Policy Center. She is formerly the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Early Childhood at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. She has spent a career strengthening early childhood programs in spots as interesting and diverse as the U.S. military in the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in Montana. And I'm happy to say that she is the keynote speaker at our third annual Thriving Children, Families, and Communities Conference, which is going to be held virtually this year on September 14th. A few times during this conversation, we'll put up a screen showing how everyone watching can register and join the more than 500 people who have already registered for this Thriving Children Conference. So thank you so much for joining us today, Linda.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation, and I just have special feelings for Nebraska. My father was born and raised in Nebraska, so have a few family ties to the state. So excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Okay, first question, and let's just dive right into the deep end here. You work for the Bipartisan Policy Institute, and I think that most of us can agree that helping our youngest children start on the right path in life is an issue that can and should transcend party lines. So what is holding us back in your view, and what are some practical and bipartisan steps forward to strengthen early childhood education in the country?
Well, I think to start with, I want to just say that childcare and early childhood education has been one of the few issues that's really remained a bipartisan issue. We have support and strong support on both sides of the aisle. So I think one of our challenges is keeping it that way. We want it to be bipartisan, and I'm a firm believer that the best policy comes out of honest debates between two sides where we hear everyone's thoughts and issues and concerns about what we might be doing. So I think as we move forward, there are options. First, I guess, is to get through the current situation with the COVID-19, which we all know has shined a light on some of the weaknesses in the early childhood system. But that said, and I need to say that said, we have had good bipartisan support for the supplemental as we move forward on that across the aisle, which is good. So I think the practical things that we need to think about going forward are keeping it bipartisan and then having some genuine conversations in this country about what needs to be done here. I think the virus, and we're going to probably get to this more in later on, but I think the virus has exposed the issues around early childhood in this country and the vulnerabilities of it in terms of the financing, and we're going to have to deal with that. So what are people's ideas on that? I think the other thing that will keep this bipartisan, and I feel very strongly about this, our need to engage non-traditional people in the conversation. For years, early childhood advocates have had a conversation with themselves. And we need to have a conversation, as you are in Nebraska, with businesses, with government, with healthcare, with education, with these other sectors that have a very important role and concern about what happens with early childhood for a variety of reasons.
And let's jump to COVID then, because you mentioned it a little bit in your answer. In your view, what has COVID-19 exposed about the state of childcare, of early childhood education in the U.S.? I mean, what have you learned, or what should we learn from this difficult experience of 2020?
Well, I think we've learned a couple of things. I think the first one is the fragile nature of the business model itself. And I think it goes without saying now that we understand that we need to invest in both the demand side of the equation, which, as I say, is parents and parents' ability to pay for childcare, whatever that might be, whether it's vouchers or direct, some kind of support to parents. That's the demand side. But what we've learned in all of this is that the supply side is equally as challenged. And I say that because they're operating on such thin margins that any loss of income from the other side, from parents or any other public source, is created really chaos in early childhood right now. So we need to figure out how we stabilize the supply side of the equation and help parents pay for it. And when we figure out that balance, I think then we will be in much better shape. And I think now both everyone that we talk to in Congress now understands that. They understand the fragility of the child care supply and what are we going to do?
Yeah. I'm fascinated by your biography, and, you know, a big part of the fascination is the different groups that you've connected with and helped strengthen ECE programs through your career. And I wanted to pick out one. I want to hear how your experience with the U.S. Department of Defense and various branches of the American military informs your perspective. And, you know, I guess the idea is, what can a Nebraska community, be it Omaha or my hometown of Red Cloud, population 1,000, what can they take or what can they borrow from the U.S. military in terms of how to improve early education and care?
Well, I think one of the first things that is important about the DoD model was that the leadership within the military understood very early the importance of child care to the mission. And whether you call the mission business or whatever, but their ability to get people to go to the flight line or to the front line, whatever, they needed childcare. And I often tell people this: when I was working at a base level for the Air Force, I was actually the second person on the base called to come to work, because the flight crews couldn't go to work on the flight line if they didn't have childcare. So they got it early, and this was literally decades ago. So the military got that connection very early. The second thing they got was an understanding that an investment in early childhood was worth it, because at that time, close to 50% of military recruited into the services came from families of military. So they were going to pay on one end or the other. If they got children who couldn't read or didn't know how to do some things, they were going to have to train them to do that on the other end. So they got the connection early about the importance, not just of having it, but of quality. So I think those two things came together then with an understanding that there needed to be some public investment by the Defense Department to make sure that childcare stayed affordable to military families. And so that's where the what I call a shared responsibility model came to play in the military system, with parents paying a share, roughly on average half of the cost, and the Defense Department paying the other half through appropriated dollars. So that shared responsibility for childcare, I think, is something that we are coming to understand right now in this country, and the need for whatever you might want to call it. In the Defense Department, it was mission readiness. In the rest of the country, it's really public good. I mean, we have a public good aspect of childcare that hasn't really been recognized until now. So the need for some public funding to make sure that we have childcare so parents can go to work, we can get our economy, you know, where it needs to be, and parents can feel that their children are learning something. And I think that's my takeaways from the military model, is we're going to have to figure out how to share the responsibility with parents in this country.
That is fascinating. All right, we're going to put up the screen again, showing how everyone who wants to register can register for the 2020 Thriving Children Conference. Again, that's going to be held virtually on September 14th. Register today, hear Linda speak, and view and interact with her and a whole host of Nebraska policymakers, teachers, business leaders, community leaders, child care providers, and the people that you were talking about earlier.
Everybody, right.
It takes everyone to figure this out. And there'll be a bunch of breakout sessions involving those people. Thank you again for joining us today, Linda, and see you at Thriving soon.
We will see you soon. Thank you so much, Matthew.